Is it true that if you waive your inspection, you have a better shot to get the home? 100%. Any agent that says otherwise is,
But oftentimes, like you said, the exterior of the home can be perfect.
yeah, I've seen homes that have staining that test well and homes that look perfect that test poorly.
Yeah, we cannot tell which ones are the problems and which ones aren't.
Yeah, and even that was a $50,000 problem. So when you're talking about stucco,
And 50,000 is small potato, roughly, that about 10% are perfectly fine underneath, and they just need maintenance.
not obviously waiving the inspection is the best way to get the house, but it's my job to tell you to do your inspection, and if you don't, here's what you can run into. And hey everybody, Jason Freedman here with Remax Properties in Newtown. I can't believe we're already on episode 8 of the Wolf Den Real Estate Podcast. So in the past, I've had my lender on a few times. I've had my broker and our operations manager on a couple different times. I've done the live call-ins with past clients. I figured since inspections are such a hot topic and they have been really forever, but over the past, I would say 6-7 years when COVID first hit, the whole inspection thing got kind of thrown for a loop. So I figured I'll bring the best stucco inspector in the game onto the podcast. So I have Ed Urban here, who is my stucco inspector, and he does a ton of business all over the area. So I figured it'd be a great opportunity to talk about stucco and talk about the inspection process, and we'll see what Ed has to say. So appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Jason. It's a long
introduce
time.
yourself.
Yeah, it's been a long time getting here. You've
Yeah.
asked me a lot of times to do this.
Oh yeah.
So,
I canceled one of them.
yeah, and so it's a privilege to be here.
Yeah,
It
I
really
appreciate
is.
it. Yeah.
And I'm humbled to be in the group of the best inspectors.
Yeah.
You know, I'm one of, I think, a handful. There's not a lot of us.
Yeah.
So, Ed Urban, my company's Urban Property Services, and my specialty is stucco and other types of exterior wall cladding systems.
Yeah.
And the big focus is the moisture testing.
Okay. So how many, so when you say there's not a lot, I know there's obviously, you could have any number of stucco inspectors or people who do what you do, but as far as, people have been doing it for as long as you have and have done as much business as you've had and as many clients, there's really just a handful, right? it's,
So if
we don't have to name names. If you want to name names, you can, but it's a small fraternity.
Yeah, it's different than like the trades,
Yeah.
plumbers, electricians, there's hundreds. If you go and look up for our certification, which is the Exterior Design Institute, there's a list. I think there's 20 or 30 on there for Pennsylvania, but the number of people that hold the highest certification is like 5 or 6,
Okay.
including me. So that was one of the points I wanted to try to make during this, is that when you're looking for a stucco inspector, I don't have to be the guy. I
Yeah.
can't be everywhere at the same time.
Yeah.
So my counterparts that I highly respect, and I have their respect as well, we carry the level 2 certification is what
Okay.
they call it. And that is the building envelope science certification. They call it a level 2. So there's a lot of inspectors that have only gone through the first level, which is essentially like an online training.
Okay.
And so it's an open book test. That's your foot in the door, but it doesn't really offer anything in terms of experience. The training on that is very limited to EIFs specifically. And that goes back to the 90s when that certification was created specifically for the drive-it litigation. So it's very EIFs focused. And so those inspectors that have that certification, they really have limited knowledge on all the different types of exterior systems that are out there. So the level 2 is the building envelope science. So the exterior of the walls and the roof, the whole outside of the house or building, commercial buildings included, is now commonly referred to as the building envelope.
Okay.
And that can take on so many different forms beyond EIFs.
Yeah.
So it's stucco, it's adhered stone, it's natural stacked stone, it's James Hardy as a brand for fiber cement siding. That's in the crosshairs of inspectors now for several years because of the same problems.
Yeah.
Because it's not necessarily specifically a stucco problem or an EIFS problem. It's a water management issue.
Yeah, and I think it's and I deal with this all the time because I show quite a few homes that have stucco or have other materials that people have heard stories about, and oh my God, it must have water issues. There must be something going on. And I can't tell you how many people, and I guess what I'm getting at is maybe you can help, maybe even like dispel some of the rumors, or say some of this stuff is true and is a valid concern. But I'll show a beautiful home and it's got stucco, and the buyer immediately says, "Oh, well, my friend bought a house that had stucco, and they had $100,000 remediation, and it was a big problem, and it's the water is getting in there, and it's a big hassle. I don't want to buy this home." The rest of the home could be perfect. It could be a beautiful 5-year-old home that just happens to be built with stucco as the exterior material, and they've heard the stories and they're afraid. So I don't know if you want to touch on like how valid those concerns can be, and maybe touch on like the years and the time frames where the stucco build was the biggest issue that's now kind of poking through the surface. So if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there to
Yeah.
unpack.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll unpack that.
I'll do my best. So that's the challenge. And when I do like presentations or like meet and greet type of networking things, and putting myself in your shoes as the realtor or as a home inspector, as a buyer, which homes are concerning?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the big question there. Is it just stucco? How old is the house? What's the relevant time period? And so the time period that's mostly relevant is from the 90s.
Okay.
So we say generally 1990 to modern day.
Okay.
It's not just stucco. The challenge is being able to tell which houses are of concern, which houses need to be tested, which houses need to be inspected. And the outward condition doesn't necessarily tell you the story or answer that question. So there's been reference over the years to stucco tiers. So on stucco houses where there's staining from like the corners of the windows, that can be an indication that there's an underlying problem. But oftentimes, like you said, the exterior of the home can be perfect.
Yeah, I've seen homes that have staining that test well, and homes that look perfect that test poorly.
And that's the whole point. Yeah, we cannot tell which ones are the problems and which ones aren't.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the invasive testing process is the only way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Infrared comes up as a possible tool to use, but it's not that useful on the exterior of the house. Infrared's measuring it's not measuring moisture, but it's measuring temperature.
Okay.
And so the temperature of the outside surface doesn't tell you if the wood behind the stucco or stone or whatever it is damaged or not.
Okay.
And so the damage under the stucco that might exist may not be wet. It may be just sitting there dormant.
Yeah.
And so a visual inspection or the infrared testing is not going to find those conditions.
Yeah. And I always feel like I think being in this business for 9 years now, I always feel like when I'm with a buyer, and I never try to comment on, obviously I talk about inspections, whether it's stucco or whether it's just radon or whatever the inspection is, septic, I'll give my experience opinions, but I always like stress to a buyer, like, yes, the house has no staining. Yes, the house looks great, but if you're up against 5 other offers and the listing agent tells us, "Hey, Jason, we have waived inspections," my response to the buyer is, listen, is it true that if you waive your inspection, you have a better shot to get the home? 100%. Any agent that says otherwise is just not obviously waiving the inspection is the best way to get the house, but it's my job to tell you to do your inspection. And if you don't, here's what you can run into. And stucco, just like septic, if it's bad, if it's wrong, even if it's kind of like we're in a deal right now that you inspected where the whole thing wasn't bad, but pieces of it were bad, and even that was a $50,000 problem. So when you're talking about stucco,
and 50,000 is small potatoes.
Yeah, I mean, I think my
stucco.
brother was 100 to 125,000, I think. So you're okay, fine. You want to waive the home inspection, which I still don't recommend, but that's a little bit more manageable. But when you're talking about stuff that you don't know about it, you don't know what's underneath, you're not the expert like Ed is. So it's visually, myself and anybody else you have to get in there and drill. So maybe explain like the process of the inspection.
Yeah, I'll share all during that period of time after COVID. There was the complete waiving of inspections in their entirety. So a lot of inspectors had to go out of business as a result of that.
Yeah.
So I was lucky to survive that because there was about a year and a half. There was literally very limited amount of
Probably
work.
end of 2020 to like 2022, like somewhere in that range.
And I forget if it was before or after, but there was also the insane amount. I guess once the shutdown
Yeah.
stopped, then it was like the floodgates opened.
Oh yeah.
And the next 6 months of that year, I guess that was 2020, it was absolute bananas.
Yeah.
The busiest year ever.
Yeah.
And then it kind of shut off.
Yeah.
During that period of time where the inspections weren't happening, I had a lot of conversations with people buying houses that were trying to understand the risk that they were taking on by waiving the inspection and not doing it. Because in that time frame, I was doing, and my counterparts as well, we were doing inspections after the closing to see, and luckily, a lot of those buyers dodged a bullet. That was kind of the results that I was showing. You dodged a bullet. You got lucky.
Yeah.
But prior to closing, when we had the conversation about what's the risk management to take on here, we were looking at the pictures of the home together and looking at, how many windows and doors there are and how many roofs interfaced with walls.
Yeah.
Because those are the vulnerable areas.
Yeah, sure.
Those are the focus of the focus of the inspections are all those intersections on the exterior where water can potentially get in and wreak havoc. So, so a lot of those conversations where if you had to replace that particular wall, you worst case scenario, 30 or 40 or 50 for that wall times 1 times 4 based on the size of the house.
You're over $100,000. I mean, obviously depending on the size,
easily.
The size of the home.
And then, how does that home fit within the neighborhood? Is it the only stucco house? Or are they all stucco? So if they're going to switch to a different exterior like vinyl to save money, would that make sense in that neighborhood?
Yeah, sure.
So all those we had all those conversations, and we did a lot of inspections after closing. Some, with that advice and with the understanding that they needed to have a budget of 50,000, 200,000, whatever the scenario was, they were ready for that.
Yeah.
And then it was a matter of figuring out if they dodged a bullet or not.
Yeah. And that's what I always, again, when I'm going back to when I'm having the conversation, because, before we get to somebody like you or any home inspector, I'm always having that behind the scenes conversation with the buyer where it's like, okay, guys, listen, my advice is for you not to waive your inspection, but if you do, that's your own decision. Here's what to expect. If your HVAC blows out, 10 to 15 grand. If your water heater blows out, 1,500. If you need a radon system, 15. So I kind of like, if your septic's bad, $40,000,
Yeah. And those are good examples.
Point them in the right direction to prepare financially.
Yeah. And you take the age of the system. Yeah. Mechanicals, if it's 25 years old, you know that there's not that much life
even
left
if it's functioning.
But what's interesting with stucco and how we got here, in the beginning, I got involved in this in my young 20s, and I'm in my young 50s.
How many years now? You want to age yourself?
It's fine. I got certified in 1998. So
we got a stucco veteran here.
In 2 years, it's going to be 30 years, which obviously it flew by.
Yeah.
And there's tons of things to talk about there over my career, and how I got here, and I had a lot of beneficial situations as far as my work.
Yeah.
When I got into it in the 90s, I didn't picture myself to be a stucco inspector. Yeah. I didn't grow up thinking, so how do people become stucco inspectors? I didn't grow up with a dream of being a stucco inspector. It happened. Right?
Yeah. Happened. You got successful with it. I mean, it's
so, So back then I actually started out as a realtor.
Okay.
I had a real estate license.
Actually,
that was the
If
beginning.
you told me that, I forgot that. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. So, with a local broker here in Yardley, not far away. So back then, it was cold calling and open houses. Yeah. That's how you cut your teeth in real estate back then. So I wasn't successful with cold calling and holding open houses. But because of that, I fell into the opportunity of inspection. Yeah. So I got to work for a company that managed inspections. Okay. So for many years, and that company was small, it was locally based. And then over time, that company grew to become a national company. Because technically international, if you include like the Virgin Islands and and Canada.
Okay.
So I had different roles with that company, with operations, managing inspectors directly, locally, and then account management.
Okay.
And so that was relocation industry based. And so we were an inspection management company, and we worked for relocation management companies. So we would hire the inspectors across the country and in Canada, and then we would manage the reporting process according to relocation expectations. So, and then the next role was supplier management, where I was directly managing the inspectors across the country.
Yeah.
So when I left that, which is going to be coming up in about 10 years ago, and there's a transition there from being national to local. So in that role as a vendor manager, Stucco just became my niche.
Yeah.
So I was given the opportunity to go get certified, to learn about Stucco so that I could train our clients on stuff. And actually it was EIFS at the time. That was what was blowing up in the 90s.
And just touch it. So spell it, is EIFS, you said?
So EIFS.
Okay. And
exterior insulation finish
okay.
system.
Gotcha. I was going to ask you earlier what that stood for.
Yeah. Okay. Some people say EIFS. Some people say EIFS.
Yeah.
Some people generically call it Drive It, because that's the big brand of that product that's out there. And so that was the big thorn in the real estate industry side at that time. So we needed to get that under control. We needed to develop an inspection process that we could standardize across the country, that we could manage, and then help our clients manage their risk. And so I was the person to go figure it out.
Yeah, I think you probably hit it at the perfect time. I mean, was it back in, was it 07, like 06 to 08? Was that when or maybe that was like a particular builder that had an issue like back in like the mid 2000s?
Well, yeah. So it wasn't specifically, just like today, it's not specifically a Stucco issue. Back then, it wasn't specifically an EIFS issue.
Yeah.
The real issue is what's underneath that surface. So it's the flashings, it's the windows.
So how the rest of it was applied and built before the Stucco was applied, essentially.
Right. Okay. And it's the same thing with siding. The first layer over the frame of the house is some kind of sheathing. And in this area here in Bucks County, Montgomery County, and the southeastern Pennsylvania surrounding area, we have traditional plywood. We have engineered plywood, OSB. And OSB is part of the crux of the problem. It's not the most durable material in terms of water. Okay. It's very water sensitive. It's great if it never gets wet. Yeah. But once it gets wet, if it can't dry out fast enough, it breaks down very quickly.
Gotcha. But is that what turns into like that mulchy, like the mulch kind of substance?
Mulch
look to it.
Borrowing from other people, it turns to vertical mulch.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because it's all those wood chips that are compressed into a panel.
Yeah.
Dimensionally, structurally, it's very good, but it's not durable in a wet environment. Okay. So keeping it dry. So you'll see it on, in attics, under roofs, and it's used everywhere, under floors throughout the house, and it's perfectly fine as long as it doesn't get wet.
Yeah. Gotcha. And our area is such a, we're not in Houston where it's 110 and humid every day, but like case in point today, it's 100 degrees and humid.
It's not
with a chance of storms.
Yeah. It's humid all the time there. So we manage a lot of inspections, and I have friends
I think we talked about Texas before.
Yeah. So it's a humid environment. They have the same problems. The balconies not being flashed correctly, roofs not being flashed correctly, windows not being installed correctly. Now, it's all the same.
Is that just, I mean, again, we don't have to name builders, right? But is that...
It's not builder specific.
Well, not even like builder, but like just in general, like, is there, I think I know the answer to this, but the reason that they're like flashing's not done properly, or the reason they use materials that they know may not be the best, maybe they're cheaper, is it just people that are doing this kind of work are just kind of shortcutting stuff on purpose, or are they it's just, so how does this stuff happen?
There's such so you mentioned like 07. There's definitely a huge transition in the building process. So I'll try to point to some things that can be educational for this audience, whoever's listening. So if you want to learn more on this topic, great resources. One particular is Building Science Corporation. And so they have an article. This was, I forget what that, I think it was early 2000s. But it was called The Perfect Storm. So if you Google the article, The Perfect Storm, you can learn in more depth as to how we got here. So it wasn't just one thing. It was the materials. It was the understanding of how buildings now have to behave based on the environment that we build in. So a big factor is that we insulate buildings more. So the more insulation that's in a wall reduces the amount of heat that can transfer through that wall. That's relevant because when a wall leaks, that water has to dry out.
Yeah.
It's the heat that's moving through that wall that historically dried out the houses. So it's not that houses never leaked. They've always leaked.
Yeah.
So in the house is built in, the last century, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, many of them were not insulated at all.
Yeah.
I've lived local for, I'm native Bucks County, native Pennsylvania. And the housing stock here, not unlike anywhere else, those age homes don't have insulation.
Yeah.
So the walls leaked, it got wet, it dried out, and nothing happened.
Yeah.
And it was, and the other side of that is that the wood that homes were built with was not as green as the lumber.
Gotcha.
So the wood that we're using, the materials that we're using are more sensitive to moisture.
Okay.
Then we insulate the wall and we reduce the drying capacity or ability of that wall to stay sound. And so we get this perfect storm, as Building Science Corporation titled their article on this. And so there's a lot of evolution of building materials, and it continues to this day.
Yeah.
Some people say the stucco issue is done and over with, but that's not really true because the rules only recently changed in 2022 for everything related to stucco and stone to be drainable.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, like, is it like, obviously builders and contractors and anybody who's doing this type of work, they're obviously very well aware of how people feel about stucco. And so like you would think that there would be eventually a way where the flashing is now done perfectly. Everything's done perfectly. Obviously nothing's perfect, but they're doing the work now that is going to hopefully prevent in 20 years.
There's still a huge uproad battle with education and making sure everybody on the job site is building it in a way where they understand. And there's a term that I learned back in some training course, to think like water. Yeah. So I'll show as a story.
I kind of like that. Think like basically what would water do?
Yeah. As inspectors.
Yeah.
And there's another, so that's kind of a key point for inspectors to think like water. But as far as like a homeowner maintaining their property and inspectors doing inspections, we also kind of fall back on this concept of the 4Ds. So it's not specifically stucco or siding that's the issue. It's these 4Ds of water management or moisture management. So how does the exterior deflect the raindrops when they hit the house? Yeah. Are they shedding into a gutter? Or if there's gutters? Yeah. Is the water being conveyed off the wall, away from the wall? So there's all these things. So as far as first deflecting the water off of the wall, but the house is still going to get wet. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So
you can't prevent that.
So so the thinking process, I think, in construction, to partly answer that question, is to builders and contractors, and they need to think like water. They need to give the water a way out. So that's kind of the evolution of thinking over the last 30 years in the past, but it still continues to this day, this idea that you have to seal it in. Yeah. So that's the opposite of what we want to do. Sure. We need to drain it out. We assume the water is going to leak. Yeah. No house is waterproof. Something is going to leak at some point. So the current thinking, and this is not new, it's many years in formation, that there has to be a path for that water to exit. Mm-hmm. And so with the labor, I was on a project. This is a full remediation project. Unfortunately, it was a siding property. Mm-hmm. And going back to that, the house wrap layer that protects that plywood, and how the windows were installed. So that was the first red flag. The windows were not installed correctly. They weren't flashed. So they were sealed in.
Are the windows the biggest issue, or is it more the roof and the flat?
Depends on the number of windows. Okay. Yeah. The more windows, the bigger.
Sure. The more risk. Yeah.
So, if it's a simple box, with a big roof that overhangs the walls that never,
Yeah.
it's impossible for those walls to get wet
Yeah.
because the roof deflects all the water
Sure.
off those
Sure.
walls. So drainage is not that important because deflection, but then you take a house that's very tall, it's got 2 stories worth of windows
Mhm.
and no roof overhang.
Yeah.
And if it's facing the weather,
Yeah.
and so orientation of the building is also critical.
Sure.
So if the water's not being deflected well, then when that water saturates the window portions of
Yeah.
that wall, if all that water is not allowed to get out,
And also depending on
then
where
it's
the
just
sun,
gonna
where the sun's
sink.
hitting the house, obviously the sun can help dry things out. But if the
Stucco
house
like
is,
sun.
yeah, if the house is covered by trees and shade, that just
We have
adds to the issue.
higher moisture,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. If I have a seller that has, if my listing has stucco, obviously my seller would love a waived inspection, but the reality is, even in this whole waiving inspection world that we're still kind of operating in, even though it's getting better for the buyer, but we're still operating in that world. Um, we have to explain to the seller that yes, that if they do a stucco inspection, it will be invasive. You have to sign a form giving permission to get into the home, or to drill into the home. So maybe explain the process of like, how do you, I mean, I know how you do it, but how do you test for moisture? Like what's the basic process?
Yeah, and it's become more routine
Yeah.
and more accepting. But yeah, going back in time, it was oftentimes a battle
Yeah.
to be able to just do the inspection.
Yeah.
Because it was invasive. So there's a couple different definitions in construction. So with testing and inspection, there's destructive testing, which means there's you're damaging the surface,
Mhm.
and somebody would have to come back and restore that investigation points. So
Sure.
if you're cutting out, a 12-inch by 12-inch portion of the wall, that have to be restored.
Yeah.
So that's destructive. Our inspection process is considered invasive, and I usually try to say minimally invasive. The goal is not to turn the house into Swiss cheese.
Sure. Sure.
We want to put the least number of probe drill points in it that we have to answer the question, does this house need remediation?
Yeah.
So it's minimally invasive. We as the inspector, we can restore those test points in the moment at the time of inspection. Nobody else has to come back behind us to make a repair.
Sure.
So you think of like a plumber that has to cut open drywall to get to a pipe. A drywall person has to come back
Gotcha.
to fix that wall. So that's destructive in
Sure.
nature. So we're minimally invasive. We're sealing our test points, and the better inspectors they're carrying a variety of colors
Sure.
on their truck
Yeah.
to make sure they seal and color match as best as they can.
Yeah.
On a lot of these, we can be pretty invisible as far as the test points.
Like I've never noticed the filling in. Like whenever you're done, I don't look at the house and say, "Oh my God, I see all 30 of the probe points." Like this is like, but you can't even tell.
Right. You know that I'm fussy.
Yeah.
I'll go back and forth to get just the right. I feel like I'm a little colorblind sometimes, but you have to have, which shade of gray is it?
Yeah.
And trying each one and making sure that, because it goes on one color, but it dries and cures slightly darker. So getting that right is important. And the texture of the stucco kind of helps. If it's a heavier texture, then the seal points can be kind of blended in with the texture of the stucco. So on most houses, there's no problem. It's almost invisible as far as how we leave the inspection and the test points. But there are some cases where it's a unique color, a very smooth texture. And so the better inspectors will make sure that, and this is what I do in the beginning of the process, I'll say, if there is that objection, if there is that concern, I don't want to do the whole inspection and then have a problem or a complaint. So we'll address it head on and say, look, just be present, owner, buyer, whoever the parties are that are critical to that concern, be present, and we'll do a test point, an initial one in an inconspicuous area.
Yeah.
And
like they can let you know, like, hey, this is okay, or wow, this is
okay. So
we don't want this all over the house.
Yeah. So whatever information they received, whatever emotion they're kind of acting on or thinking on, we can dispel that. We can show how simple the drill. We do have to go through the surface to determine if the wood behind it is acceptable or not. but we can leave it in an acceptable condition.
Yeah.
And so we just have that blessing to proceed from that point.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we find a spot near the electric meter, near the AC unit where there's a lot of penetrations through the wall.
Yeah.
Ugly stuff, kind of, as they say. And so in that area, we can find a spot.
Yeah.
Won't be a concern.
And like how many, I mean, so the drill points or the probes, you know, like so you're basically going around like underneath windows, underneath gutter points, underneath the roof area, like that's kind of where you go essentially. Like you're not drilling in the middle of a wall that's not near a window, you're kind of going through like entry points.
So I believe over my career, I feel like the inspection process or the inspection itself is answering a question.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at it. So what's the question that we have to answer? And then whatever that answer is, we have to be able to defend it.
Sure.
So if we say it's okay, we need to be able to defend that it's okay. And if it's not okay, we have to be able to defend that it's not. So, so the testing strategy, the moisture survey of the exterior, we're focused on areas that are most vulnerable to leak. So the focus of the testing process is below window corners.
Yep.
And below where multiple windows are joined together.
Okay.
That's a common leak point. And where roof surfaces meet a wall surface. And so the roof intersections, they're kind of the biggest source of damage because you have a high volume of water shedding off of that roof.
Yep.
And if it's not draining into a gutter and being diverted away from the wall into the gutter, you've seen it multiple times.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much. It's literally water can find a pinhole.
Yeah.
And it's going to find it. There's in the industry, water always wins.
Yeah. And then it gets into that pinhole, and then it just starts to
just little by little
itself. Yeah.
It just that OSB sheathing gets a little bit wet, a little bit more wet.
Yeah. And
so that's the challenge with that material. It dries very slow. So you don't want water to get into it. And it just continues and it gets worse over time. So the testing strategy is mostly focused on roof intersections and window interfaces. There are additional areas where problems come up. There's a couple neighborhoods where I've done a lot of work, and in that one particular one, the mulch beds, they kept adding mulch year after year after year after year, so much so that the wood wall was buried a foot by a foot of mulch.
Yeah.
So the mulch is full of moisture. It holds moisture.
Yeah.
Termites come with mulch sometimes.
Yeah.
So those walls.
I'll get my termite guy on next time.
Yeah. Those walls were buried in soil. And so all the moisture from the soil just transferred through the wall.
Yeah.
And is that the fault of the stucco? It has nothing to do with the stucco.
Yeah.
It has to do with the mulch being added year after year after year and burying the wall in the dirt.
Sure.
So that moisture transferred to the wall and caused it to rot away.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, so deck attachments, just penetrations through the wall. So I had, this is a Newtown house. I think this is going back a year or two. It was one of the best examples of a stucco installation that I had ever seen in 30 years. It was perfect. We generally preface our results on no house is perfect.
Yeah, sure.
But this system was literally perfect.
Yeah, you didn't get any of this.
As I'm going.
Red or yellow result, all green readings.
Everything's in the green. Everything's in normal. The point of that story is that after the stucco guy completed his work, the electrician came in and installed these really high-end light fixtures across the back of the house.
Yeah.
It was like a resort in the backyard.
Sure.
And every 6 feet, they put a light fixture across the back wall of the house to illuminate the patio and the pool or whatever was there. But this specific light fixture had a design where it was causing the water to flow directly into the wall.
So this
through the hole,
perfectly designed home became
So the hole was made for the wire to go through to power the light fixture.
I knew that's where you were going with this.
and that became a water injection point.
Yeah.
And below each one of those light fixtures was just a path of rot. Wow. It was a shame. It was a beautiful house, a beautiful stucco job, and a joke. At the beginning, I wasn't joking. I was thinking, really, this could become a training example.
Sure.
I said that to my client, like, we need to use this as a training example
Yeah.
for other inspectors. And then we started encountering this, like, wait a minute, why are we not hitting solid wood here? This doesn't make sense. And that's an important point in the inspection process. It's kind of over time has changed. So now the better inspectors, the experienced inspectors, and this is something we kind of debate, but in terms of answering those questions, if we're probing through that real small drill bit, so the drill bit's only 3/16 or a 1/4 inch, it's very small. And through that, we can feel if the wood is solid or not. So if we encounter a condition where it's not solid, we need to know why.
Yeah.
So we bump up to a 1-inch core sample. So we'll remove a small plug 1 inch of the stucco material so that we can see what's going on.
Because the regular probe, that's not a visual thing, that you're just getting a moisture reading in there, or you can feel if it's solid or not.
I can feel,
pull the inch out,
but I can't see.
Then you can visually, okay.
Yeah. So by pulling just 1 inch out, I can see the different layers of what that wall assembly is. So, did it have house wrap? Did it have building paper? Did it have 1 layer, 2 layers? Is there a drainage layer? And then what is that material behind the stucco or the stone or the siding? Is it plywood? Is it engineered plywood? Is it gypsum board? Is it fiberboard?
Yeah.
Is it foam? So there's a bunch of materials that may not be intended to even give you resistance. So I've come behind junior inspectors that did the probes without a core, and they concluded that everything was rotted and needed remediation. But what they ended up, so when we went back and did the follow-up core samples, we found that they didn't realize that they were probing through foam.
Okay.
And there was no wood there intentionally by design.
Yeah.
So it was the correct conclusion was wrong, that the wall was rotted because it wasn't wood.
Sure.
And there's a lot of thermoply houses in this area.
Okay.
So that's a fiberboard. It's very thin. It doesn't have the structural resistance that wood has. And if the inspector is being aggressive, they can push right through it.
Sure.
And if they don't take the core to verify what they're actually feeling, they could be coming to a wrong conclusion.
Sure.
So the core is very valuable. We can see what the layers are. We can see if there is flashing or not in that spot where they're supposed to be flashing. And we can document that it's actually damage.
Yep.
So underneath the exterior surface, it's not just one big sheet of wood. There's gaps in between the smaller pieces of wood. And sometimes on an inspection, an inspector might probe in between 2 pieces of wood.
Sure.
And just by accident, not hit anything solid. Without the core, inspectors can conclude it's rotted, but it's not.
Yeah, sure.
We do the core, and we say
drilled in that one little spot, just went right through, right in between.
Right in between, and the core proves that it's actually solid, clean, perfect wood, and no issue. So when there's an anomaly, it's I think best practice to do a core and document whether it is or is not okay.
What was it? 10% of homes have virtually no issues. There's like a percentage breakdown that you kind of gave me one time that I thought was interesting.
So in that role in relocation where I was managing inspections, and I had the benefit of seeing inspections come in from all across the country, from all types of different inspectors, we used to tabulate statistics on, and this is how we were managing risk. We would try to figure out what was the frequency of issues.
Yep.
And so when I look back on my results and I kind of dig into the numbers a little bit as far as data, and just very roughly, because the sample of homes, so if you take a neighborhood of 30 houses and the neighborhood itself has specific issues and 100% of those houses have issues, that sample doesn't really reflect the whole region. So if we take everything in the region, all the different types of systems, the EIFS, the stucco, the stone, all the testing results that come out, what I found in my experience, when I take it all together and have a broad variety of inspection results, my finding is that my results are roughly, that about 10% are perfectly fine underneath, and they just need maintenance.
Yeah.
So there's no remediation, there's no underlying damage, everything's intact, and
maybe like a couple like patches here and there, just
well, that's the 80. Yeah, so that's the 80%. So 10% I find are in good condition and just need maintenance. About 10% I find are like the full tear off.
Yeah.
Like the actual nightmare.
And those are the stories that people hear about. Like, oh my God, my neighbor paid $100,000 to like my brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, unfortunately had to, Joel had to do that.
Yeah. So it's good that it's only about 10% of those for me, because that's bad news. That's really hard to deliver.
Yeah.
So bedside manner for the inspector is important in this regard when we're dealing with those situations where it is going to be hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
It's tough conversation.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And there's different factors that contribute as to, how that decision comes to be made.
That's why you do your inspections, folks.
And I unfortunately had one of these last week. 30 years old. The stucco looked great. A little crack here, a little crack there.
Yeah.
But all the windows were in absolutely poor condition. And so it wasn't just a stucco remediation. It was window replacement.
Windows, window frames. Like you're getting into dormers, you're getting into everything.
Yeah. If you're stripping the walls and you're putting new surfaces on, you're not going to keep old windows that are falling apart and have new walls next to it. So remediation is the entire wall assembly. So windows, doors, so that was about 4,000 or 5,000 square feet.
Yeah.
But we talked about numbers in the 250 to 350 range for that, because there was a lot of windows.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The window ticket was probably going to be 150.
And I don't care if you're talking about a $2 to $3 million home, and I don't care if this person has the money to do it. Like that is like you said, like that's a tough, like we have to, as realtors, we have probably more uncomfortable conversations with clients than you do. Cause you're just finding, listen, I'm just inspecting, here are the results. This is what I'm like, for us to have those conversations in other aspects of real estate. It's as long as you're honest, and as long as again, it's presentation. Like you don't want to like they'll be freaked out naturally with the money, but you want to give them ways to get things done. You want to be resourceful for them. You need to be just give them a path.
The inspection, for me, it doesn't stop with the inspection.
The house isn't falling down, but
my clients, I give them the opportunity to keep in touch with me.
Sure.
If they need help with reviewing an estimate, understanding the language that remediation contractors are talking about. And that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
Just talking about the remediation piece. That is just a whole nother piece.
Yeah.
So just having the inspection, but making those decisions and which one is the best for that particular scenario for the parties involved. There's a lot that can factor into that. And there's a lot of pros and cons.
Sure.
So to kind of circle back to the 80%, I said the majority of my inspection results are isolated areas of concern.
Yeah.
There might be one specific reason. It could have been one window was installed wrong.
Yeah.
And it leaked.
Kind of like
caused some damage.
We don't have to mention the address, or like the one that we're going through right now. Like that. So Ed actually inspected a home in Newtown for friends of mine. We're under contract. We settle in a couple of weeks. And, the report was mostly green, the moisture was fine. We had a big issue, we had to tear down the chimney and basically rebuild the chimney. There were some isolated spots, around the garage area, on the side of the home, I believe, that were, and even these isolated problems, it was still a $50,000 hit. And thankfully, the address will go unnamed, but the sellers and the listing agent were, they were very helpful. Like as a seller, when a buyer delivers that report to you, and I always tell my sellers this, like, put yourself in the shoes of that. Like, what if you were the buyer? What, are you not going to ask for that to be fixed? Like, you're not going to take on a $50,000 problem. And it's not, it's not a blame game. You don't want to blame this. You don't blame the seller. Like, yeah, maybe they could have done a little more maintenance and things like that, but the average person is not thinking about that. So it's not the seller's fault. It happens. They're the owner of the home. So yes, we're going to ask for the credit, or in this case, we're doing the remediation prior to settlement. So, but yeah, it was patch stuff, and it just, it adds up, so.
Yeah, and it's becoming more challenging with those cases, depending on where that isolated area might be.
Yeah.
Some areas are easy to patch and some are not. If it's a big wall with a small spot in the middle, it's hard to hide that patch. So then the conversation is, how do we make that entire wall?
Yeah.
If a patch is an available option, how do we make that entire wall look right?
Sure.
So refinishing, new coatings, does a patch make sense? Can it be guaranteed?
Is that why a lot of these, so we're using Freel for this one. So is that why a lot of these guys don't want to take on smaller jobs, because it just,
well, there's,
maybe not even like they want,
no,
like, oh, that's not, it's
no,
kind of like me. It's like, I don't always need to sell a $5 million. I want all the business, but I feel like a lot of these contractors,
it's more work for less money.
Exactly.
That's
kind of what I was trying to spit out. It just wasn't coming out
that's
right.
One angle. That's definitely one angle.
Yeah.
But there's a whole liability piece to it. And that's why I referenced warranty.
Yeah.
A buyer is generally going to want some kind of guarantee.
Sure.
As a
Then
homeowner,
5 years is just going to
if I'm not buying or selling and I want to gamble on a patch, I can make that decision for myself.
Yeah.
But when a seller is making a decision for a buyer, or the buyer is trying to get through the real estate transaction, I think the toughest time to make those kind of decisions is during a real estate transaction. Sure. I think you touched on it perfectly, and you're using that case example perfectly. There's a limited amount of time to do the inspection, to respond to the inspection, to make a decision on what you're going to do.
To get quotes, to schedule the contractor, to get it. Yeah, it's
the luxury of time is a luxury. Yeah, if you can do it before listing the property, if in advance of a sale,
to do a pre-listing inspection, and if whatever comes up, you
have the time to make good informed decisions. So a lot of times I'm counseling my clients in terms of looking at that estimate, that it actually solves the problem.
Yeah.
The other point that I wanted to make, it ties in with if you're doing a pre-listing inspection, or if you had an inspection in the past, disclose.
Yeah.
The toughest position for inspectors to be in is guessing.
Yeah.
I have a case right now where a recent inspection was done, and they did a very limited inspection, and my goal was to help them go get through the remediation process and to oversee it.
Yeah.
Upon arrival, I found much more portions of the house tested, and that wasn't disclosed anywhere. So now we're like coming back to square one.
Yeah.
Like, what is the actual condition? What were all these test results? Who did them? And then what's the right scope of work that's going to come out from that?
Sure.
So, and using today, the job I'm going straight to today, it was inspected 10 years ago, and it was remediated immediately after. So we're going to see. I know the inspector; he's a great inspector.
Yeah.
I know the contractor; they're local. They have a good reputation. So we're going to see if the work that they did was effective to address the problems that this particular Stucco house had. And it wasn't severe; it was isolated areas. 10 years ago, the market was different. So I think they did like 50,000.
Yeah.
I think it was 43,000 plus painting. So we'll see if that has held up for 10 years. We'll see how that goes. But you need time to work through the estimating process.
And luckily we had that. Like I forget exactly when we went under contract, but this has been this particular transaction with my buyers. It's been, we did like a 60-day settlement. I mean, if you go under contract and you're doing a 3-week close,
it's not reasonable.
I mean, credit's great, but it's like you don't, as a buyer, listen, some buyers, again, if somebody has a certain amount of money they're sitting on, a lot of them, and I have clients like this where they're like, just get me in the house, I'll figure it out. But for most buyers, the educated ones they don't want to just jump into a nightmare scenario. Like, yes, that's not a lot of time. And thankfully we've had time in this transaction, but I've been a part of other transactions that I feel the weight of the pressure from my buyer. And even though it's not my money, it's not going to be my house. It puts realtors like me in such a tough position. And going back to the whole delivery thing, we just have to deliver how we're presenting. We have to present to them in a way that's going to be realistic, but not like doomsday scenario. It's like, guys, here's what you're looking at. Here's what to look out for. Here's what to be prepared for. And if you're okay with that, then we'll go to the table. If not,
And those are the situations where the deals fall apart because there's not time. They're all avoidable.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
really are. But you're a realtor with experience with this
Yeah.
issue. Not every realtor has experience
No,
with this issue.
no.
A lot of realtors have avoided it intentionally.
Yeah.
You just can't.
You can't.
It's
No.
not avoidable anymore. So you have to be prepared. You have to use an inspector that has a lot of experience, that has done remediation oversight,
Yeah.
that knows what the contractors are doing, because the issue is not completely resolved. The new concern is if these drainable systems are going to work.
Yeah.
They're new, and they're not being.
So they haven't been.
They're,
You haven't been able to test them yet. That'll be years down
10,
the line.
10, 15 years ago,
work.
Fiber cement was the answer.
Yeah.
We have a lot of situations where fiber cement is got the same repeating problems that it had before. There's mistakes that happen in the field. There's I don't think I finished the one story, but the one story is a fiber cement job, and the windows are installed wrong. I was there monitoring the remediation, and some laborer hopped off of a truck and just jumped in. I was talking to the project manager, looking in this direction. I turn around, and this guy that wasn't there, he wasn't on the roll call for the day.
Yeah.
He grabs a sealant tool, and he starts sealing a window that's not supposed to be sealed. So he's putting material where it doesn't belong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they had to pull it all apart and take that, clean all that away and start that spot over. So there's just so many things to talk about. I think we just scratched the surface. I hope we covered.
No, we covered it. This is,
I
think we did about 45 minutes. I think we covered quite a bit. And honestly, it's just like I'm going to keep doing with this whole podcast adventure. It's, I've had my lender on like 3 different times, and we keep trying to dive into different stuff. I'm going to hopefully, I'm not sure if Matt Tracy watches this or not, but I'm going to try and get Matt on camera. Well, that'll be an uphill battle, but it'd be good to talk to a general home inspector. But yeah, we could listen. Maybe episode 13 we'll have you back or something, and we'll get past the surface and we'll dive deep into the world of stucco. So,
there's a good point to be made there. The home inspectors have a big challenge. They have to look at 1,000 items.
Yeah,
and they can't guess at whether the stucco or the stone is fine or not.
And that's why you have the specialists like you.
And even if they look just like that house that looked perfect, it had issues because of a specific problem that couldn't be identified without the invasive process. So I have a high regard for my home inspector friends.
Yeah.
They have a tough job, and they're put on the spot to make the right recommendation. Actually, I don't think it's fair for them to even answer the question, do I need a stucco inspection?
Yeah.
Because their process can't even answer that.
Exactly.
It's a hidden issue that we just have to deal with.
Sure.
And fortunately, it's not life and death.
No, it's not. And nothing in this business is, but I think we work in a very time sensitive business, a very high pressure business. And I'm very thankful to have people in my corner like you, like Matt, like any of my inspectors that I use, any of the specialists, because it's, again, my job is to get the buyer to the table, and oftentimes, and hopefully, they're able to do their inspections to get the home. And part of that process is for me to guide them through that. And 9 times out of 10, they don't know a stucco inspector. They don't know a home inspector. Like, I'm the one they don't have to use my crew. Like, you don't have to use Ed Urban. I highly recommend you do, because he's treated me well over the years, and he's very experienced. But I have to, if I'm going to refer somebody, I have that high level of confidence that I'm going to do that. So
thank you, Jason, for having me. It was really a privilege to be here today, to spend some time with you again, a little more relaxed.
Yeah.
No pressure from the cameras, of course.
We're not drilling holes today.
But if I can be of help to, I've prided myself to be a resource for home inspectors, for clients, for realtors. If there's a question or a concern, I'm happy to answer it.
And do you have a website, or do you have
I pick up the phone, oftentimes on a ladder.
Yeah.
So phone number 267-963-7227. Some general information about myself and my company can be found on my website, which is urbanpropertyservicesllc.com.
Okay.
A little bit long, but also a more detailed history of my career is on LinkedIn.
Okay, awesome. And LinkedIn is just Ed Urban?
I think so.
Okay. We'll find out.
Yeah. So it's either Ed Urban or it's Urban Property Services LLC.
Awesome. All right. Well,
Thank you again.
Thanks. So I want to thank you guys for being here. Again, Ed Urban, best stucco inspector in the business. He's been with me for 9 years since I jumped into this whole thing, and appreciate you joining us for episode 8 of the Wolf Den. Thank you, everybody.